A seasoned nurse is publicly humiliated by an arrogant doctor who calls her just a nurse during a critical procedure. But when she identifies a detail everyone else ignored in a newly arrived patient, a coded military tattoo, and vital signs incompatible with his medical history, everything changes. Minutes later, a military convoy surrounds the hospital. Federal agents storm the emergency room, and she discovers she just saved a high-classification undercover agent. What seemed like just another shift transforms into a national security operation, exposing government secrets, internal conspiracies, and an information trafficking network within the hospital itself. This is the story of how a simple nurse became the key piece in an operation no one could imagine. The fluorescent lights in the emergency room buzzed with that familiar hum I had grown used to over 15 years of night shifts. My name is Lauren Hayes, and I have been working as an emergency nurse at Pacific Memorial Hospital in San Diego, California, since 2009. I moved here from a small town in Oregon, chasing the dream of making a real difference in people's lives. That night started like any other, chaotic, exhausting, but manageable. Dr. Richard Hastings, the new head of emergency medicine, had just arrived from Boston with an ego bigger than his credentials. He made it clear from day one that he did not respect nurses, especially women like me who questioned his methods. We were treating a car accident victim when I noticed something off about the medication dosage he ordered. I spoke up, suggesting a different approach based on the patient's weight and medical history. He turned to me in front of the entire staff, his voice dripping with condescension. "Just follow orders, nurse. You are just a nurse, not a doctor. Remember your place." The room went silent. I felt my face burn with humiliation, but I bit my tongue and stepped back. 20 minutes later, everything changed. Paramedics rushed through the doors, wheeling in a man in his late 30s, unconscious, no identification, severe trauma to his chest and head. His clothes were torn, covered in dirt, and what looked like gunpowder residue. As I began the initial assessment, cutting away his shirt to access the wounds, I saw it, a small tattoo on his left ribcage. It was not just any tattoo. It was a series of numbers and a symbol I recognized from a documentary I had watched about military intelligence units, Delta 794. My heart started racing. His vitals were all wrong. Blood pressure too stable for someone with these injuries. Heart rate controlled. Pupil response delayed but calculated. This was not shock. This was sedation. Someone had drugged him before he arrived. I checked his arms for injection marks and found a fresh puncture wound on his inner elbow, carefully hidden. Dr. Hastings pushed me aside, barely glancing at the patient. "Standard trauma protocol, Hayes. Stop wasting time." But I could not let it go. I leaned closer to check his airways when the man's eyes suddenly opened, just a crack. His lips moved almost imperceptibly, and I heard him whisper two words that made my blood run cold: "Code Shadow." Then his hand gripped my wrist with surprising strength, his eyes locking onto mine with desperate intensity before he lost consciousness again. I stumbled backward, my mind racing. Code Shadow. That was not medical terminology. That was military. I looked around the emergency room. Nobody else had noticed. Dr. Hastings was barking orders. The other nurses were rushing to prepare the operating room, and I stood there, frozen, knowing that something far beyond a simple trauma case had just walked through our doors. My hands trembled as I checked his pulse again. Then I heard it, the distant sound of helicopter blades cutting through the night air, getting closer and closer. If this story has already grabbed you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel now, because what comes next will surprise you even more. When the helicopter noise grew louder, and within seconds, the main hospital entrance exploded with activity. I could see through the emergency room windows. Black SUVs were pulling up, one after another, forming a perimeter around the building. Men in tactical gear poured out, weapons drawn, faces hidden behind dark visors. My pulse hammered in my ears. This was not a police response. This was military. I turned back to the patient, my patient, and suddenly everything about him made sense. The controlled vitals, the coded tattoo, the whispered words. He was not just anyone. He was an operative, and whatever mission he had been on had gone catastrophically wrong. Dr. Hastings finally noticed the commotion outside. His arrogant expression melted into confusion, then fear. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted, looking at me as if I had answers. I did not respond. I was too focused on keeping the man alive. His breathing was becoming shallow, and the monitors were starting to show irregularities. I adjusted the oxygen flow and checked the IV drip, making sure everything was optimized. The emergency room doors burst open, and 6 armed agents stormed in, followed by a woman in a dark suit with sharp eyes that scanned the room like a predator assessing prey. "Everyone step away from the patient," she commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Now, Dr. Hastings stepped forward, trying to assert his authority. I am the attending physician here, and you cannot just... She cut him off with a raised hand and a federal badge. Homeland Security. This is now a matter of national security. Clear the room. All of you, except you. She pointed directly at me. You stay. My stomach dropped. Every other staff member was ushered out, some protesting, others too shocked to speak. Dr. Hastings looked back at me with a mixture of resentment and fear before the doors closed behind him. The woman approached me, her heels clicking against the tile floor with military precision. What did he say to you? She asked without preamble. I hesitated, my mind racing through possible responses. Should I tell her? Could I trust her? Did I have a choice? He said code shadow, I finally answered, my voice barely above a whisper. Her expression did not change, but I saw her jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. What else? Did he say anything else? Did he give you anything? I shook my head. Just those 2 words. Then he grabbed my wrist and passed out. She studied me for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether I was lying. Behind her, medical personnel in military uniforms entered and began working on the patient with equipment far more advanced than anything we had in the hospital. They moved with practiced efficiency, clearly trained for exactly this kind of scenario. The woman finally spoke again, her tone softer but no less serious. Miss Hayes, yes, I know your name. You may have just saved this man's life by paying attention to details everyone else missed, but you are now involved in something much bigger than you realize, and that means your life just became very complicated. Before I could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the hospital. The patient was crashing. His heart rate spiked, then plummeted. The military medics shouted orders to each other in coded language I could not understand. I moved instinctively toward the bed, but the woman grabbed my arm. Let them handle it, she said firmly, but I saw her eyes flick to the monitors, and for the first time, I detected genuine concern. The patient's body convulsed once, twice, then went still. The lead medic called out flatly, "We are losing him. Thank you for sticking with me this far. It shows you feel the same way I felt when I lived through all of this. So go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell, because what comes next changes everything." Pakinanduosa's time seemed to slow down as I watched the military medics work frantically to revive the agent. Their movements were precise, mechanical, but I could see the desperation underneath. This was not just another patient to them. This was one of their own. And despite the woman from Homeland Security holding my arm, despite the armed guards stationed at every entrance, despite everything screaming at me to stay back, I could not just stand there and watch him die. I pulled free from her grip and stepped forward. "His airway is compromised," I said loudly, cutting through the organized chaos. "You need to intubate now, but his trachea is swelling from internal trauma. Standard procedure will not work." Every eye in the room turned to me. The lead medic, a stern-faced man with graying temples and captain's bars on his uniform, glared at me. "Stand down, nurse. We have this under control." "No, you do not," I shot back, surprised by my own boldness. "I have been working emergency trauma for 15 years. I know when someone is about to die, and he is about to die. Look at his neck. See that discoloration? That is not just bruising. Someone tried to strangle him before he got here. His larynx is damaged. If you intubate normally, you will puncture it, and he will drown in his own blood." The room went deadly silent. The captain stared at me, then at the patient's neck, then back at me. "What do you suggest?" he asked, his tone shifting from dismissive to genuinely curious. "Surgical cricothyrotomy," I replied without hesitation. "Small incision, direct access below the damaged area. It is the only way." The Homeland Security woman stepped forward. "Can you do it?" "Me?" I looked at her, then at Dr. Hastings through the window, watching from outside with a mixture of rage and humiliation on his face. "I am just a nurse, remember?" The woman's eyes narrowed. "Miss Hayes, if you can save this man's life, I do not care if you are a janitor. Do it." The captain handed me a scalpel without another word. My hands steadied as training and instinct took over. I made the incision with practiced precision, inserted the tube, and within seconds, the monitor showed his oxygen levels climbing. His heart rate stabilized. The tension in the room broke like a snapped wire. The captain nodded at me with something that almost looked like respect. "Good call, nurse." The woman from Homeland Security pulled me aside as the military team continued working. "What you just did, understanding the coded tattoo, recognizing the signs of sedation, hearing what he said, and now saving his life when our own people could not, you realize you just became a crucial witness in an ongoing operation, right?" "I did not ask for any of this," I said, my voice shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "I know," she replied, "but it does not matter. Someone inside this hospital is working against us. Someone knew he was coming here. Someone tried to make sure he did not survive, and right now, you are the only person we can trust." My blood turned to ice. "You think someone here is involved?" She nodded grimly. "And until we figure out who, you are not safe. Neither is he." I looked back at the patient, the agent, lying unconscious on the bed, finally stable. I thought about Dr. Hastings' reaction when the military arrived. I thought about how quickly everything had escalated, and I realized with growing horror that I had just stepped into something far more dangerous than I ever could have imagined. questioned. The woman handed me her card. Agent Sarah Morales, Homeland Security. You are under our protection now, whether you like it or not. Outside, I could hear more vehicles arriving. The entire hospital was being locked down, and somewhere in this building, someone was watching, waiting, and planning their next move. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this story from? Write it down in the comments. It is incredible to see people from so many places following stories like this. And if you are feeling what I felt when this happened, hit that subscribe button, because this is only the beginning. The next 6 hours were the longest of my life. The hospital was transformed into what felt like a military base. Every floor was swept by agents with dogs. Every staff member was questioned. Every computer, every file, every piece of equipment was examined. And I sat in a small conference room with Agent Morales and 3 other federal officers, answering the same questions over and over again. Tell us exactly what you saw. What did he say? Who else was in the room? Did anyone act suspiciously? I repeated my story until the words felt meaningless. The coded tattoo, the whispered phrase, the puncture mark, everything. They recorded every word, took notes, and exchanged glances that told me they knew far more than they were sharing. Finally, Agent Morales leaned back in her chair and rubbed her temples. Miss Hayes, I am going to tell you something that does not leave this room. The man you saved tonight is Agent Michael Torres. He has been undercover for 3 years, infiltrating a weapons trafficking network with ties to domestic terrorism. 2 days ago, his cover was blown. He barely escaped with his life. He came here because this hospital was supposed to be a safe extraction point. But someone tipped off the wrong people. Someone inside this hospital. I felt sick. Who? She shook her head. That is what we are trying to figure out. But here is what we do know. The tattoo you identified, Delta 794, that is his unit designation. It is not something anyone outside of classified military circles would recognize. The fact that you did shows remarkable awareness. The code he whispered to you, Code Shadow, that is an emergency authentication phrase used only when an operative's life is in immediate danger. It means trust no one except the person I am telling this to. My hands were shaking, so he was telling me to trust no one? She nodded slowly. Not the doctors, not the nurses, not even us, until we could verify who we were. You were the only person in that room he identified as safe. I do not understand why. Agent Morales pulled out a tablet and showed me a photograph. Do you recognize this man? It was a staff photo from the hospital directory. Dr. Richard Hastings, the man who had humiliated me just hours earlier. We have been monitoring communications in and out of this hospital for the past 48 hours. Dr. Hastings received 3 encrypted messages from an unknown source in the last 24 hours. The content was deleted, but the metadata shows they were sent just before Agent Torres arrived. My mind reeled. Hastings? He is involved? We do not have proof yet, she admitted, but the timing is too convenient. He is new here. His credentials check out on the surface, but we are digging deeper. And there is something else. She pulled up another image. Security footage from the emergency room entrance. What do you see here? I looked closely. It was from earlier in the evening before the agent arrived. I saw myself, other nurses, Dr. Hastings, and wait, I pointed at the screen. That man in the corner. He is wearing scrubs, but I do not recognize him. He is not on our staff. Exactly, Agent Morales said grimly. He entered the hospital 2 hours before Agent Torres arrived, had access to the emergency room, and disappeared right after the military convoy showed up. We believe he was the one who administered the sedative that nearly killed Torres. He was here to finish the job if the drugs did not work. I felt cold all over, and I just happened to be there when Torres arrived. She nodded, which makes you either incredibly lucky or incredibly unlucky, depending on how you look at it. The conference room door opened, and the captain from earlier walked in. His expression was grave. Agent Morales, we found something. He placed a small electronic device on the table. It was a bug, hidden in the emergency room computer system. Someone has been monitoring patient admissions in real time, looking for specific names or aliases. Torres was flagged the moment the paramedics called in his arrival. Agent Morales stood up, her jaw set, locked down everyone who had access to that system in the last 72 hours, cross-reference with Hastings' schedule, and get me full background checks on every staff member hired in the past 6 months. She turned to me. Miss Hayes, I need you to go back to work. What? I stared at her in disbelief. Are you serious? If the people behind this realize we are onto them, they will scatter. We need them to think everything is normal. You saved Torres's life, which means they failed. They are going to be watching to see what happens next. And we need you to act like nothing has changed. But they might come after me, I protested. That is why you will have 2 undercover agents with you at all times, she assured me. You will not see them, but they will be there. And if anyone approaches you or acts suspiciously, you report it immediately. I looked at the bug on the table, then at Agent Morales's determined face, then at the door leading back to the chaos of the emergency room, where a man's life hung in the balance because of secrets I never asked to know. I took a deep breath. Okay, I will do it. The returning to work felt surreal. hospital. The hospital was still swarming with federal agents, but they were trying to be discreet now, blending in as maintenance workers, visitors, and even patients. I knew 2 of them were assigned to protect me, but Agent Morales was right. I could not tell who they were. That was probably the point. Dr. Hastings was back on duty, acting as if nothing had happened. He avoided eye contact with me, which was fine because I did not know how to look at him anymore. Was he really involved in trying to kill a federal agent? Or was he just an arrogant doctor who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time? Every time I walked past him, my heart raced. My shift was supposed to end at 7 in the morning, but Agent Morales had asked me to stay longer to maintain appearances. Around 9, a patient was brought in with severe abdominal pain. Standard procedure. I began the intake assessment, checking vitals, asking questions about symptoms, but something felt wrong. The patient, a man in his mid-40s with a forgettable face and generic clothes, kept staring at me. Not at the nurses in general, at me specifically. "Have we met before?" I asked casually, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "I do not think so. But I have heard good things about you, Nurse Hayes. You are very observant." My blood ran cold. How did he know my name? All staff wore badges, sure, but the way he said it felt personal, deliberate. I excused myself and immediately signaled to a colleague, a nurse named Marcus, who had been working with me for years. "Can you take over this patient? I need a break." Marcus frowned. "You okay? You look pale." "Just tired," I lied. "Please?" He nodded and took over while I slipped into the staff break room and pulled out the card Agent Morales had given me. I dialed the number with shaking hands. She answered on the first ring. "Hayes, what is wrong?" "There is a patient in bed 7. He knew my name. He said I was observant." It felt like a threat. "Stay where you are," she ordered. "Do not go back out there." Within minutes, the break room door opened, and 2 plainclothes agents entered. A woman in her 30s with sharp eyes, and a man who looked like he could break someone in half without effort. These were my shadows, I realized. The ones who had been protecting me. "Are you Agent Morales' protection detail?" I asked. The woman nodded. "Agent Lisa Chen, this is Agent David Park. We have been with you since you left the conference room. You were right to call. That patient's medical records are fake. He checked in using a stolen identity." I felt vindicated and terrified at the same time. "So what happens now?" Agent Park spoke for the first time, his voice surprisingly calm. "We extract you, right now. Someone knows you are the key witness. They are testing to see what you know." "What about the patient? What about Dr. Hastings?" "We have agents moving in on both," Agent Chen assured me. "But our priority is keeping you alive." They escorted me through back corridors I had never used before, moving quickly but not running, trying not to draw attention. We exited through a service entrance into an underground parking garage where a black SUV was waiting. "Get in," Agent Park ordered. As I climbed into the back seat, I looked back at the hospital, the place where I had spent 15 years of my life, where I had saved countless lives, where I thought I knew everyone and everything. Now it felt like enemy territory. Agent Morales was already in the SUV, working on a laptop. She looked up as we pulled away. "We just arrested Dr. Hastings. He is in federal custody." My heart pounded. Was he the one? She shook her head. "He is involved, but he is not the mastermind. He was being blackmailed. 3 years ago, he made a mistake during surgery in Boston that resulted in a patient's death. He covered it up. Someone found out and has been using that information to control him. They ordered him to report when Torres arrived and to delay any life-saving treatment." I felt a mix of anger and pity. So he was just a pawn. "Aren't we all?" Agent Morales muttered. "But here's the problem. Hastings gave us a name. The person who has been blackmailing him, the person who planted the bug, the person who sent the fake patient to intimidate you. It is someone you know, someone you trust." She turned the laptop toward me, and my world shattered. On the screen was a photograph of someone I had worked with for over a decade, someone I considered a friend, someone I never would have suspected. "No," I whispered. "That is impossible." The photograph on the screen showed Marcus Chen. Yes, the same Marcus who had just taken over my patient assignment, the colleague I had trusted for years, the man who had covered my shifts when my mother was sick, who had celebrated my promotions, who I thought I knew inside and out. I stared at Agent Morales in disbelief. "Marcus? There is no way. He is one of the most dedicated nurses I know. He would never." Agent Morales cut me off gently, but firmly. "I know this is difficult, but the evidence is substantial. Marcus Chen has been making deposits into an offshore account for the past 2 years. $50,000 here, $30,000 there. His salary does not come close to explaining that kind of money. We traced the payments back to a shell corporation linked to the weapons trafficking network Agent Torres was investigating." "But Marcus," I repeated, my mind refusing to accept it. "Why would he do this?" She pulled up more files on her laptop. 6 years ago, his younger sister was killed in a gang shooting in Los Angeles. The men responsible were never caught because they had connections. They had access to illegal weapons that gave them an advantage over anyone who tried to stop them. Marcus blamed the system. He blamed law enforcement for not doing enough. And eventually, someone from the trafficking network approached him with an offer. Help us move information. Help us identify potential threats. And we will make sure the people who killed your sister pay. I felt sick. So he made a deal with the same kind of people who killed her? Agent Park spoke up from the front seat. Grief makes people do irrational things. They convinced him he was getting justice. By the time he realized what he was really doing, he was in too deep. They had enough evidence to destroy his career and put him in prison, so he kept helping them. The SUV pulled into an underground facility, some kind of federal safe house, I assumed. We exited quickly and were led into a secure room with monitors showing various camera feeds. One of them displayed the emergency room at Pacific Memorial Hospital. I could see Marcus working, completely unaware that his life was about to implode. How long have you known? I asked Agent Morales. We suspected someone on the nursing staff about 72 hours ago, she admitted, but we only confirmed it was Marcus this morning after we arrested Hastings. The doctor gave him up immediately in exchange for a reduced sentence. My hands were shaking. I poured myself water from a dispenser in the corner and tried to process everything. 15 years of friendship. 15 years of trusting someone who had been feeding information to criminals. How many people had died because of what Marcus had done? Agent Torres almost became one of them. Agent Morales said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. If you had not been there, if you had not noticed the details everyone else missed, Torres would be dead, and a 3-year operation would have been compromised. Marcus made sure Hastings was the attending physician that night. He made sure the emergency room was understaffed. He made sure everything was in place for Torres to die quietly, written off as just another trauma victim who did not make it. But I ruined their plan, I said bitterly. You saved a life, she corrected. There is a difference. One of the monitors showed federal agents entering the emergency room. I watched as they approached Marcus. He looked confused at first. Then his expression changed. Realization, fear, resignation. He did not run. He did not fight. He just put his hands up and let them take him away. I felt tears burning in my eyes, not for him, but for the person I thought he was, for the friendship that had been a lie, for the trust that had been shattered. Agent Morales placed a hand on my shoulder. I am sorry you had to see that. I wiped my eyes. What happens now? Now we move to the next phase, she said. Marcus is not the top of the chain. He reported to someone else, someone higher up in the organization. And that person is going to be very interested in why their plan failed, which means they are going to be very interested in you. The door opened, and a man in an expensive suit walked in. He had the bearing of someone used to authority, military posture, calculating eyes, a presence that commanded the room. Agent Morales stood up straighter. Miss Hayes, this is Director James Blackwell, head of the task force investigating this trafficking network. Director Blackwell shook my hand with a firm grip. Miss Hayes, you have done your country a great service, but I am afraid your involvement is far from over. We need you to testify, he said without preamble. Everything you saw, everything you heard, everything you did, it is all crucial evidence. But more than that, we need you to help us set a trap. I looked at Agent Morales, then back at the director. What kind of trap? He smiled, but it was cold. The kind that catches the person at the very top, the person who has been orchestrating this entire operation. And to do that, we need them to think you are still a target, that you know more than you should, that you are a loose end that needs to be eliminated. My mouth went dry. You want to use me as bait? He did not flinch. Yes. And I spent the next 48 hours at the federal safe house, absorbing details about the massive trafficking operation. Weapons moved, lives lost, and an investigation years in the making. Agent Michael Torres, the man I saved, was stable but critical. For 3 years, he had been deep undercover as a weapons dealer, trusted by dangerous people, only to be betrayed just as he was set to expose the network. Dr. Hastings and Marcus Chen were identified as pawns. The true mastermind remained hidden, someone smart, connected, and with informants everywhere. That is where you come in, Agent Morales explained. We are going to send you back to the hospital. You will return to normal life, but you will be wearing a wire, monitored 24/7, waiting for them to make contact. I was skeptical. And you think they will? They have to, Director Blackwell stated. You are the only person outside our task force who can identify Agent Torres. You saved his life. You are a direct link to him and to us. Whoever is running this operation cannot afford to have you as a loose end. They will come after you. I took a deep breath. To refuse would mean losing the best chance to catch them. When do I go back? Tomorrow. The following morning, I returned to Pacific Memorial Hospital. The media reported a security incident, but most staff were unaware of the truth. Hastings and Chen were quietly gone. I clocked in, wearing a wire so small I couldn't feel it. knowing dozens of federal agents were watching my every move. I acted natural, treating patients, filling charts, and waiting. 3 days passed. On the 4th, in the supply closet, the hospital administrator, Dr. Sandra Morrison, walked in. "Lauren," she said, closing the door, "we need to talk about how much you know and what you are going to do with that information." My heart hammered. "I do not know what you are talking about. Please do not insult my intelligence," she sighed. "I know about Agent Torres. I know you are working with the federal agents, and I know you are wearing a wire right now." My blood turned to ice. She produced a small device and pressed a button. A high-pitched frequency filled the air. "That is a signal jammer. Your wire just stopped working. By the time they realize something is wrong, this conversation will be over." I backed against the shelves. "You are the one behind everything. Guilty as charged. I connect people who need certain items with people who can provide them, and I remove obstacles when necessary, like Agent Torres. I saved his life. You should not have. Now I have to clean up a mess." Suddenly, the door burst open. Agent Morales rushed in, weapon drawn, followed by Agent Park and a tactical team. Morrison didn't flinch. She smiled and raised her hands. "Took you long enough. The signal jammer was designed to alert you after 30 seconds. I was wondering if you would make it in time." As Agent Morales handcuffed her, Morrison looked back at me. "You have no idea what you have just done, Lauren. The people I work for, they do not forgive, they do not forget, and they do not stop." "Then it is a good thing we do not either," Morales shot back. I collapsed against the shelves, shaking. It was over. Dr. Sandra Morrison's arrest sent shockwaves. Federal agents raided her properties, uncovering detailed records of weapons shipments going back 15 years, encrypted communications, millions in shell corporations, and evidence linking her to at least 7 unsolved murders. She had used her hospital position to monitor and eliminate threats. I was interviewed extensively by federal prosecutors, giving testimony against Morrison and her network. Marcus Chen took a plea deal, 20 years for his full cooperation. Dr. Richard Hastings, who had admitted to the cover-up and delaying treatment, was sentenced to 15 years and had his medical license permanently revoked. The scandal made national news, and I became a reluctant public figure. 3 weeks after the arrest, I received a visitor at the hospital cafeteria, Agent Michael Torres, in a wheelchair, alert and grateful. "You are awake. You are okay. Thanks to you," he smiled. "That cricothyrotomy saved my life. You paid attention when everyone else was too busy or too compromised. You trusted your instincts. That is not just doing your job. That is being a hero." I confessed my fear and anger. "I am angry. I am scared. I keep looking over my shoulder. I do not trust anyone anymore. That is normal," he said gently. "It takes time to process trauma like this, but it does get better." He confirmed they were taking Morrison's threat seriously. "The people she works for coming after you. You will have protection for as long as you need it. It feels like I am in prison even though I did not do anything wrong. I know, but it is necessary. These people do not forgive. But here is what she did not tell you. We do not forget either. Every single person connected to this network is being hunted." As he wheeled away, I realized I had made choices, trusted my instincts, and stood up when it would have been easier to stay silent. That was what being a nurse really meant, fighting for your patients no matter what. 6 weeks after the incident, Pacific Memorial felt like a fortress with new security protocols. One evening, Agent Morales approached me in the parking garage. "There has been chatter," she said, serious. "The remaining members of Morrison's network are planning something. Your name has come up multiple times. We want to move you to a secure location until we can neutralize the threat." I was tired. I am tired of running. I am tired of being scared. I am tired of letting them control my life. "You are not running. You are surviving." Before I could reply, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You should have minded your own business, Nurse Hayes. Mistakes have consequences." Below was a recent photograph of my apartment building. Morales immediately took my phone, cursed, and called for a team. "You are coming with me, right now." We drove into the mountains to a remote, off-grid safe house. The cabin was sparse, but a sanctuary. For 3 days, I was cut off, with only Morales and the constant awareness that people wanted me dead. On the 4th day, Morales smiled after a phone call. "We got them, the ones who sent that message, and several others. 18 arrests. We shut down the last major cell of Morrison's network. Is it really over? The immediate threat is gone. But networks like this, they have a way of rebuilding. You will need to stay vigilant." She offered words of affirmation. "What you did, that is the kind of courage most people never find. You should be proud." "I am just a nurse," I repeated the words that had started everything. "No, you are so much more than that." I returned to my apartment. Later, Agent Torres called. He told me the final reports were in. "Because you saved my life, we were able to dismantle an entire network. 42 arrests total. total, hundreds of illegal weapons seized, an estimated 8,000 lives saved from potential future attacks. That is what you did, Lauren. You are a hero, he said quietly. I sat in my apartment, not a victim, but a survivor. I was replaced by someone harder, wiser, who knew her own strength. I made a decision. I would not hide. I would keep trusting my instincts, saving lives, and never again letting anyone tell me I was just anything. 6 months later, Pacific Memorial has moved on, but I have not. I still work the night shift, but I am different. I pay attention to every detail. Last week, I saved a woman from an abusive partner. Not a national security threat, but a life saved because someone paid attention. That is what I do now. Agent Torres recovered fully and now trains other agents. Dr. Morrison is serving multiple life sentences. The threats against me have stopped, and the protective surveillance is over. I am free, but I will never feel completely safe again. Maybe that vigilance is what keeps me alive. Yesterday, a new doctor, fresh out of residency, snapped at a young nurse, dismissing her concern about a patient's dosage. She is just a nurse. Know your place. I walked up to him calmly. There is no such thing as just a nurse. We are the ones who spend the most time with patients. We are the ones who notice when something is wrong. We are the ones who save lives every single day. And if you ever dismiss one of my colleagues again, you will find out exactly how much power a nurse has in this hospital. He stammered an apology. I walked away, feeling pride. I understood my own worth. I am Nurse Lauren Hayes. I have saved countless lives, testified against criminals, and survived death threats. But more than any of that, I have learned that the unglamorous, exhausting work of caring for others is the most important work in the world. We are not just nurses. We are advocates. We are protectors. We are the last line of defense between life and death. Being a nurse is everything. It is courage in scrubs. It is compassion with a stethoscope. It is the difference between someone living and someone dying. I was told I was just a nurse and expected to accept it. Instead, I proved that there is nothing just about what we do. We are extraordinary, we are essential, and we will never stop fighting. This is the story of how an underestimated nurse became the fundamental piece in a national security operation. Sometimes the most underestimated people are the ones who make the difference when it matters most.